Hello everyone and welcome back to Rising Sign Astrology. Today kicks off a special series where I'm diving deep into each of the 12 zodiac signs, one by one. So whether you're new to astrology or you've been studying it for years, this series is meant to spotlight the unique essence, challenges, strengths, and opportunities of every sign. I'll be breaking down what makes each sign tick, what makes them unique, and not just the stereotypes, but the real patterns behind them. So if you ever felt misunderstood because of your sign, or just want to better understand yourself or the people around you, then you're in the right place. And of course, as always, if you enjoy the content, please subscribe or tap the bell so you don't miss what's coming next. And a quick like or comment really helps push this video out to more people who enjoy astrology and tells the algorithm that it's worth sharing with others. So I appreciate that. And if you're ever looking for a personal reading, whether it's love, relationship, career, or just a general forecast of what's happening in your life, all of the booking details can be found in the description below. And with that said, let's jump into it. Okay, Libra rising. So if you're a Libra rising, that means that Libra was rising over the eastern horizon at the moment you were born, right? I think we all know that. And that makes you someone who leads with poise and charm and a very strong awareness and emotional intelligence around other people. Libra is cardinal air. So while you come off as cooperative and easygoing, you're actually very adept and wired for leadership, not just in the aggressive, confrontational way, but you tend to lead and influence through consensus and through diplomacy, through strategy, and just your ability to create harmony and make things better for everyone else around you. You know how to read a room, right? And within that, you also know how to smooth over tension within a room. And you know how to make people feel not just considered, but seen. But make no mistake, you're not passive, right? Libra may be ruled by Venus, but you're not a passive person. You're not a wallflower. You're very intentional in how you behave and even calculated. But above all, thoughtful in how you present yourself and how you interact with others. Your chart ruler, Venus, is the planet of beauty and attraction, but also social grace and values. And unlike Taurus, right, the other sign that Venus rules, Libra channels that Venusian energy through the air, giving you a very strong aesthetic sense, right? Refined taste and a natural relationship intelligence. You know what the other is thinking, you know what they're feeling, you have a very high emotional intelligence. And you're often well liked because you understand how to mirror people and meet them halfway. But when not functioning at the highest level, that can come at a cost, right? It could lead to struggling with indecisiveness or over-accommodating behaviors like people-pleasing or avoiding conflict at the expense of your own beliefs or your own desires just to keep the peace. And that's when things start to get out of whack. People talk about Libra as the scales, right? How they balance everything. But the reality is what they're trying to do is achieve balance. And if you're always trying to achieve balance, that means you haven't achieved balance. So oftentimes Libras are not as balanced as you would think in terms of giving, receiving, themselves, the other, and things within that theme. But still, with Venus, at the helm of your chart, you're wired to make life as well as relationships more fair, more enjoyable and beautiful, and yes, balanced. Now, from a mythological perspective, Libra is the only sign in the zodiac, I guess other than Sagittarius, that's represented by an object, right? The scales, rather than a living being. But it still carries a very deep symbolic story. The scales belong to Astrea, the goddess of justice and balance, and she sought to maintain order during a time of rising human chaos in the world. When she could no longer bear humanity's corruption, the story goes that she retreated to the stars, taking the scales with her as the constellation we know as Libra. And as a Libra rising, this archetype plays out in your life through your deep desire for fairness and civility, but most of all, peace, right? In a world that often feels chaotic and very unjust, you're trying to balance the scales, and not just between people, but also within yourself. Now, Libra rules the lower back, the kidneys, and the body's internal balancing systems, right? Including hormone regulation and equilibrium. And if you have Libra rising or key placements here, your body tends to reflect imbalances quickly, especially in relationships or stressful social dynamics. Lower back tension, kidney issues, or adrenal issues or fatigue may show up when you're carrying emotional weight that doesn't belong to you. And of course, you thrive in balance. So when life feels out of sync, whether in work or partnerships or just your daily routine, it often hits your body first. Your system naturally wants and strives for harmony, and you feel off when there's too much either chaos or indecision around you. Now, in Vedic astrology, Libra is ruled by Tula, symbolized by the scales. And similarly, is ruled by Venus, right? The planet of love and beauty and refined judgment. So, while Venus often gets stereotyped as romantic and like all about romance, in Tula, it's about discernment, right? Choosing what's worth your time, choosing what's worth your energy, as well as your effort. And from a mythological perspective, it's associated with the weighing of karma, right? Tying into the idea of justice and fair exchange. You're here to learn how to create balance, not by avoiding conflict, by making thoughtful, values-driven choices. And relationships, of course, are central to your growth in this life. But so is learning when to step away and to restore your own inner peace or balance, right? So, with that said, let's walk through your whole sign house chart, where Libra rules the first house, and we'll go, around the horn, each sign, each house in order. So, you're Libra rising, which means you have Libra on the first house. Your first house is you. It's your identity. It's your public persona. It's how others see you and experience you in this 3D world. And with Libra, you lead with all of these things we spoke about, right? Diplomacy and grace. You're someone who tends to be very polite and tactful. You're socially aware. You're very mindful of other people and very, thoughtful in that regard. You could even put other people first. And people would probably often describe you as pleasant or even attractive because Venus rules Libra and this is the first house. And you would come across that way without even trying. There's a natural charm here. There's a natural elegance to how you carry yourself, whether that's in your appearance, in your speech, or just your natural ability to diffuse tension. You are likely very aware of how you're perceived and then adjust your behavior to create a sense of connection or harmony with the other, right? You go out of your way to make other people feel comfortable around you. And they may not know why they feel so comfortable, but you do. And oftentimes you do this unconsciously where you're able to pick up on these things and then, just tweak yourself a little bit to make people comfortable around you. And it doesn't matter what walk of life they're from. It doesn't matter how similar or dissimilar they are to you. You would be able to cue in on a person and adjust accordingly to really anybody. And you do that not from a superficial standpoint, like trying to mimic them, but you do it because you care about making them feel comfortable. You care about things like fairness, and you want your presence to make them comfortable and to reflect things like mutual respect and balance and thoughtfulness. Now, as a Libra rising, that means you have Scorpio on your second house. So this is a rather intense placement. Not only in how you earn money and how you handle money, but also to your self-worth, right? How you value yourself. And you don't just want financial security. You want emotional power tied to your resources. So you may be very secretive about your finances or have interesting or complex feelings about what you do or don't deserve as it relates to money or your values. You might also feel the need to be very much in control of your income. And funny enough, as Scorpio rules the eighth house of other people's resources as well as shared resources, you may be somebody that actually resists sharing too much. And because the eighth house is all about extremes and cycles of death and rebirth and transformation, it's very likely that financially you're going to go through periods of extremes as it relates to your finances, right? Building it up, losing it, rebuilding it. Starting a job, earning great, losing it, finding the next job and rebuilding it to something better. Like those transformations are going to be a consistent theme in your life, most likely. Again, not knowing your personal chart with your, personal planets, where they're located and the aspects, but we're talking general astrology here. But the lesson here is that your worth isn't tied to what you control or even what you possess. It's tied to that ability to transform and regenerate it. And over time, I think people will start to pick up on this, even if they're not consciously understanding why it's happening, but that, okay, this is sort of just how my finances go. And you get to a point where you're comfortable in knowing that, okay, if this goes away, I can rebuild this. And that's not going to be an issue. But it may take a while to get there, and it could be harder earlier in life, for sure. Now, you have Sagittarius on the third house. So this gives you a very optimistic mindset, right? And probably a very big picture view as well. You would be somebody that communicates and speaks with those Sagittarius traits of confidence and warmth and a desire to inspire, right? Or even teach. Sagittarius is ruled naturally by Jupiter, the teacher, guru. And you're probably not overly detail focused, right? Especially in your everyday communication, your learnings, your everyday environment, things of that sort. But you would care very much about getting to the meaning behind what's said, right? You likely grew up in a high energy or philosophical environment, right? Maybe your parents were teachers, or maybe you were just the one asking big questions early on. And for you, things like travel or study or cross-cultural, multicultural experiences are going to shape how you think, but then also how you communicate as a result. And you would naturally enjoy conversations that expand your worldview and would likely come across as somebody that's a great storyteller and, again, a natural teacher. Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter. Jupiter is the ultimate teacher of wisdom. So you would have that ingrained in you here. Now, when it comes to your fourth house, you have Capricorn on the cusp. And Capricorn is ruled by Saturn. So this is going to make your home life, right, your ancestry, growing up, roots, very structured, very emotionally reserved, and likely even disciplined. If there are negative aspects here, it could have been very isolating or harsh as well. But regardless, you likely grew up in a family where expectations were high on you, right? And you had high expectations or duties placed on you at an early age. And you were in a situation where your emotional needs, either weren't addressed or maybe not, considered as the most important thing. And as an adult, you tend to bring some of that with you, right? You're going to be somebody that tends to take your family and your home responsibilities very, very seriously. You would want your personal space to be very orderly and practical, right? Something that supports your long-term goals in some way, whether that's from a real estate perspective or if you work from home, having an office, things like that. It would be a home would be more than just an emotional center for you. It would be tied to bigger dreams. So building equity may be as important as having a nice, hearth by the fireplace. But, you probably carry a very heavy emotional weight, and you would carry that in private. And within your family or early on in life, you will or were forced to take on the role of the provider or the role of the protector for your family, right? There would have been a heaviness here. But you would ultimately create that security, and it would come through, your hard work. Again, the Saturnian influence. Now, your fifth house is also ruled by Saturn, right? You have Aquarius here. So when it comes to your fifth house of joy, creativity, romance, children, entrepreneurial pursuits, even speculative games like gambling, this gives you a very unconventional approach. You'd be drawn to things in those areas that are very different or very futuristic or intellectually stimulating. An example of that is in dating, you may seek partners who are quirky or very non-traditional or just intriguing to you from a mental perspective, right? You connect on an intellectual level that is almost or more attractive to you than maybe physicalities. And your creativity is likely tied to innovation in some way, right? Whether you're using technology to communicate or you depend on it, think like social media, or your creativity is tied to social causes or the community in some way. These could all be themes here. And you would not be somebody that's overly sentimental when it comes to love or pleasure or romance or, dare I say it, even your children in some cases. But you would value freedom and authenticity in all of those areas above everything else. And the funny thing is you actually express yourself best when you feel emotionally uninhibited and just mentally alive and attuned. Again, Aquarius on the fifth house, from a perspective of raising children, it's ruled by Saturn, so you could have children later in life, or the children you have could be non-traditional or a little different or quirky, or just very, very intelligent or future thinking. That's likely as well. Now, as Libra rising, when I look at your sixth house, you have Pisces here. So this would bring a natural, dreamy, almost, watery, fluid quality to things like your daily routines and your work and your health. You are probably somebody that resists having strict schedules or feels overwhelmed by too much structure when you don't have that freedom to move about how you like. And you would do your best when your day-to-day life allows for that freedom and makes room for things like intuition and compassion and creativity in your daily work and your routines and in your job, right? All of those Piscean traits. And it's, it would not be surprising as well if you worked in service-orientated fields that involved healing or your imagination or emotional care. And from a health perspective, you may be sensitive to your environment, and you would absorb stress physically through the body. And again, right, Pisces is about blurring the boundaries. It's water, and this would speak to not adhering to structure very well, right? Routine would not come natural to you. You would resist it. It wouldn't feel good. But, you can, recognize that. And if you focus that energy into career paths that, are adaptable, that would honor your need for flexibility and freedom, and honoring your limits, and giving yourself space in that regard, then it can actually be very helpful when you deal with that energy consciously, because then you can avoid burnout, and not just physical burnout from a health perspective, but also burnout from a work perspective. So I think consciously knowing what you're, most naturally comfortable and attuned to, with Pisces on the 6th house, is helpful in that regard. And if you have Pisces on the 6th house, that means obviously you have Aries on the 7th house. So Aries here makes you attracted to, but also attract people who are very bold and direct, and independent in terms of their partnerships. And the 7th house is the house of committed partnerships that are governed by a contract. It's business partners, it's marriage partners, it's really any one-on-one relationships that's bigger and more important to you than, just, a friend. It's someone that knows you really, really, really well. So while you're diplomatic, right, as a Libra rising, and naturally refined and, intentionally soft around the edges in some cases, your partner is very likely the one that brings the fire and the passion in the relationship. And it's not uncommon for a Libra rising to find themselves with people who are going to challenge them, who are going to push them, even call them out. And there's a tendency to project assertiveness onto others with this placement, but ultimately relationships are going to teach you how to be more decisive and to be more courageous in your own right. Libra risings learn so much through the other in their relationships. And for them, long-term partnerships bring those lessons that they need in boundary setting and self-assertion and balancing, keep making people feel comfortable, and balancing connection and the need for that with the also very much real need to have autonomy in life. So it's an interesting dynamic, but one that's very, very important for Libras, and is oftentimes not easy to navigate, especially when you're younger in life. Now, when I look at your 8th house, this is where you have Taurus. So Taurus is naturally ruled by Venus. So this brings a sense of sensuality, as well as steadiness, right? The Taurian influence to your deeper emotional connections, entanglements, and financial bonds, right? The 8th house is the house of shared resources, the house of death and rebirth and transformation. It's naturally ruled by Scorpio. And you would be someone that needs and craves not only comfort, but also loyalty in your closest intimate relationships. And you would never rush into anything in terms of that would have any layer of emotional vulnerability. You would be someone that trusts very slow, needs to build that trust, know that it's there, and value it before you go all in. And because of this, you likely have very strong boundaries when it comes to intimacy or shared resources and who you give trust to. You need to feel very, very secure before merging with someone else in any of those areas, whether it's emotionally or financially. And the placement does give you the ability to build slowly after loss or emotional upheaval, which is going to happen with this placement because the 8th house brings chaos and it brings uncertainty and it brings deaths and rebirths and deaths again and more rebirths. But with Taurus here, you would have that, that grit and that steadiness to be able to pick yourself up and rebuild again, after the fire, from a metaphorical standpoint, even if it's slowly. And transformation would come for you, but it wouldn't come quickly or overnight in most cases, right? But once you do go through that transformation, because your growth would be rooted in very slow building true real substance, it would stick. But ultimately, this 8th house with Taurus here tells me that intimacy for you is all about consistency and shared values, and at the end of the day, trust that was built and forged over time. Now, when I look at your 9th house, you have Gemini here. So this means that your beliefs, your worldview, your desire for truth comes through mental exploration, right? You may study. You may, this is like the third hour. You may study multiple religions, or, be very well read, or, be somebody that's always traveling, right? Gemini is the twins. It's ruled by Mercury. It's always curious, always moving, always on the go. And when you put that in the 9th house of worldview and beliefs and the desire for travel, that's what you get. But you're not just looking to travel for travel's sake, or you're not just looking to expand your world belief or understand other philosophies just to do it. What you're really after here is perspective, right? You have a desire to understand how the world works from different multiple angles, right? And because you're Gemini, ruled by Mercury, you're the twins, you're not going to be fixed in your views. Gemini is mutable energy. So you'd be able to hold multiple viewpoints, even if they're contradictory, simultaneously. And because the 9th house also rules college and, graduate school, higher education, that would tell me that your higher education or even your spiritual path would likely involve some connection to those Mercurian, areas of media, communication, and writing, right? And you would probably learn best through direct experience, and not just one experience, but a whole range of different experiences. With Gemini here, you would crave a variety of experiences. And you might, or very likely, would shift your belief systems several times throughout the course of your life. Because Gemini here is going to make you very, very curious and a student of life. And you would always be open to the next new, bigger, better idea. You wouldn't be fixed in your philosophies here. Now, for Libra rising, your 10th house is, you have Cancer here on your 10th house cusp. So this tells me that your public image, your career is, nurturing and empathetic and emotionally intuitive in some way, right? Cancer is ruled by the moon. The moon is cyclical. It waxes, it wanes every 2.5 days. It's connected to the mother and intuition and nurturing. So in your career, you're going to want to care for other people in some way, whether that's through counseling, through hospitality, through healing others, or, just being an emotional leader. Like somebody that your direct reports and peers can come to, and you can guide them through crisis. And people in the workplace would see you as somebody that's protective of others and the weak, and somebody that is safe to talk to, or even maternal in some way. And that could be male or female. And you would naturally rise to positions of responsibility in any field that requires emotional intelligence. And because your 10th house is ruled by the moon, you may also experience fluctuations in your professional life, right? Depending upon how aligned it feels to your inner world at any given moment in time. And for you, it's interesting because the 10th house is about career, public image, leadership. It's very closely tied to the classic definition or version of success that people picture in their head. But for you, success isn't about status. For you, it's much more about emotional fulfillment and making others feel like they belong. Now, as a Libra rising, you also have Leo on your 11th house. So this tells me, Leo ruled by the sun, you're going to naturally shine in group settings. You're going to be magnetic within your friendship circles, within your networks, and probably looked to as the center of attention in your community or a leader. And you exhibit the qualities of a natural leader within the group with Leo here. You would bring traits of creativity and warmth and generosity to the groups you join, to the friendship circles that you're a part of. And your long-term goals tend to be very bold and ambitious, right? This is Leo here. And they would be driven by a sense of pride and a deep desire to leave a legacy, to create something, right? Leo naturally rules the 5th house of creations. So you thrive when you're a part of a group that celebrates your individuality and that lets you express your full self to the world. And you'd be drawn to causes that empowers others to lead, right? Or to create, because Leos want to be recognized for who they are, and be put in that spotlight, but not just for themselves, but also for the fulfillment of how it inspires others in that same way. And ultimately, your presence within your groups, your circles, your communities is one that is expressive, but also inspiring to others. That would be a natural trait for you here. And to round out the chart, when we look at the 12th house, the house that is hidden from view, that is, secluded house, more house of isolation and spirituality. It's also the house of hidden enemies and self-sabotage, as well as addictive tendencies. You have Virgo here. So Virgo in the 12th house tells me that you have a private side or unconscious side that's constantly analyzing or looking to fix things or even quietly worrying about outcomes. And with Libra, on your first house, you externally come off as somebody that's very well put together, that's very balanced, charming. But behind the scenes, you're going to wrestle with perfectionism and overthinking. And people with Virgo in the 12th house, especially if it's afflicted or has difficult aspects, naturally struggle with anxiety. And I'm not a doctor, so take that with a grain of salt. Nor do I play one on YouTube, but I've seen this manifest as people struggling with anxiety. But especially when you don't give yourself the time or permission to rest, right? Because the 12th house is also where we go for, seclusion and to rest and recharge. And when you don't do that, it can manifest negatively in those lower form or lower octaves of Virgo. But when you do take time for reflection and solitude, it helps you get clarity on the flip side. So you may be highly intuitive in a way that is only able to reveal itself when the noise quiets down. So it's important and essential for you to carve out alone time. And for you, it's not as an escape, but really as a way to return to yourself. So as a Libra rising, you're here to bring balance and fairness and beauty into the world, to make other people feel comfortable and seen and lead them through authenticity and fairness. But it can't be at the expense of yourself or your own truth. We've established that you're naturally good at making others feel seen and making others feel understood. And your gift, your ability to harmonize is phenomenal, right? And when you find your voice and stop waiting for permission to use it, you can become a great force of influence and, genuine grace and leadership in this world. You just have to make sure that you're not sacrificing or dimming your own light just to accommodate other people or keep the peace. So if that resonated or you found that helpful, please drop a comment below. Well, that wraps today's video. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this helpful or interesting or insightful, please don't forget to like the video or subscribe or just drop a comment below, right? Especially if you resonated with the insights around your sign, or if you used it as an opportunity to learn more about someone close to you. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And stay tuned because, I'll be continuing this series or series like this in the future. And as always, if this resonated, please drop your thoughts in the comments. It really helps tell the algorithm that this content is worth putting in front of other astrology lovers. So I appreciate that. And of course, if you're ever looking for a personal reading, whether general or career focused or even romance focused, all of the booking details are in the description below. As always, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss another notification. And I will see you in the next one. Thanks.